A Plaguelands Media production.
Hey everyone, this is Hugh from Plaguelands Media bringing you another book review today. So, cheers. Oh, that is good. Now, today I am reviewing a book that, to be perfectly honest, I saw the movie first. And that is Sleepers by Lorenzo Carcaterra. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Now, I saw this movie when it first came out in 1996. It was kind of the talk of the town at the time because you had Brad Pitt, De Niro, Minnie Driver, all of these kind of big names, Kevin Bacon, and a few others in it. And I actually saw it on Christmas night in 1996. A friend and I went to the cinema and watched this movie. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great film, very disturbing, a good revenge thriller, but kind of put it out of my mind and didn't really pay it any attention back then. I have only actually seen the movie once, and that was when I saw it at the cinema. For some reason, Sleepers kept popping up on things like Google and Facebook and all this kind of shit. So I looked a bit into it and discovered it was based on a novel. Because back in the day, movies based on books, you don't really pay attention to the books. You just want to go see the fucking movie. And I was like that. But I thought, it keeps popping up. I'll buy it and see what it's all about. Review it for the channel. I am so fucking happy I did. This book has solidified itself in my top 10 books of all time. Possibly a top 5. Possibly. I have actually bought Lorenzo Carcaterra's novel Gangster to read and review because I love the writing style in Sleepers so much. I want to see if the author can kind of emulate the style that propelled him to the top of the New York Times bestseller list. So, those of you that don't want a spoiler-filled review, and this probably isn't going to be a spoiler-filled review just because so much happens. The movie had so many big names in it that people have probably seen it. But this is a revenge book, I should say. This is about 4 friends who pull a prank that goes wrong and they are incarcerated in the Wilkinson home for boys where the guards abuse them in numerous ways, and 30 years later they manage to get their revenge. That's the book. Why is a book like this up there on my top 10 books of all time, possibly top 5? Well, first of all, writing style. The writing in this is fucking phenomenal. It's told from a first-person perspective. The author kind of puts himself in there. We're given at the beginning that it's a true story, but in actual fact, while incidents happened, a majority of this book is fictional. But the narrator is Lorenzo, and the way that it's told is just absolutely phenomenal. So there is that. The second reason why this is up there is because a majority of this book sets up the relationship between the 4 characters, the 4 friends, Lorenzo, John, Tommy, and Michael. They are all kids from Hell's Kitchen, and what we get is this very real understanding of not only their childhood, but what happens to them, and then ultimately what happens after that. And you start to really kind of feel for these kids. I knew what had happened to them, and I knew the story going into this didn't make it any less poignant. It was phenomenal. In fact, you got more from the book than you actually did from the movie. And that, of course, I mean, you couldn't spend half of the movie detailing their childhoods, but half of the book is just this budding friendship and the things they go through growing up in Hell's Kitchen before they are forced to endure what they do in the Wilkinson Home for Boys. The final reason this hits my top 10, possibly top 5 books of all time was just because it surprised me. It surprised me at how much you really start to feel for these characters. And I've been reviewing books on this channel. You know, there's like 420 something videos on here, and they're books and games and whatnot. And there are only 2 books that have actually choked me up. One of them was Daisy Jones and the Six, I believe that's called. Anyway, the video's on there, and you can see me then. I got choked up. I got choked up reading this. Like, this is... It's superb. There's no other way to say it. This is a revenge thriller, so to speak. Even when you know what is going to happen to these kids, if you've seen the movie, fucking hell. That's all I'm going to say about that. Is that they're my 2 words to describe this book. Fucking hell. Go out, get it, read it, watch the movie, although I haven't seen it in... what is it, 96, 2006, 30-something years, whatever. I actually have it downloaded. I will rewatch it. I wanted to watch it again before the review. Didn't get a chance to, but you know what? This book, go out and read it. You are not going to do yourself a disservice. It is phenomenal. With that said, we're going to get into a little bit of a spoilerish review, but I'm going to try to curb that today just because I want you to read this. I really want you to go out and fucking read this book. So, you know what? Let's just get settled in for the next episode of...
Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. Read a fucking book. People.
Okay. Sleeper starts with the narrator confronting one of the guards from the Wilkinson School for Boys. And the guard is begging forgiveness for what he did, and the narrator's not having any of it. And then we shift to the narrator talking about his home life in Hell's Kitchen with his best friends. Michael, who's kind of like the older kid, but the leader of their little group. John, who has a few health issues. Tommy, and himself. And we learn that Hell's Kitchen is a community unto itself. They look after each other there. People look after each other there. And even though all of them come from, I'm not going to say broken homes, but they are verbally and physically abused by drunken fathers and shit like that, they form a bond which persists through everything that happens to them up until the end of the novel. We also are introduced to various characters. In Hell's Kitchen that they interact with, King Benny, who is like this crime boss. There's this overweight guy that runs a kind of bodega that we come to find out he kind of takes the kids under his wing and looks out for them and whatnot. So a majority of this book is setting up those friendships, which is why what happens to these kids and the aftermath is not only heartbreaking, but all the more poignant at the end of the book. So, there is an easy way to write this. You start out with a group of kids, they pull a prank, it goes wrong, they go to juvie, they get out, and they get revenge. Done. Easy. Whatever. No. That is not what this is. This is setting up the relationships between not only the four characters, but also Carol, who is Michael's girlfriend. But she has a connection to all the boys. And we get all of these little fucking stories about them pulling pranks in church. Because they're all kind of going to this Catholic school, and they're altar boys and all this kind of stuff. And make all the jokes you want. It is nothing to do with this story. There's a priest called Father Bobby, who is kind of looking out for them. He's kind of like the cool Catholic priest. He smokes and plays basketball and shit like that. Which, yes, might be a cliche. It really fucking works in this. So, you get this build-up of this friendship. And this goes on for, I would say, about 170 pages of this novel. Where that's all you're getting. All you're getting is the background, the home life, how they became friends. They became friends by the narrator seeing some famous wrestlers in a restaurant and going in there and talking to them, while the other three kids who were already friends follow him, and then they get ringside seats and all this kind of stuff. It's fucking great. The anecdotes of growing up in Hell's Kitchen are phenomenal, and it just makes it all the more worse when they pull a prank and it goes wrong. So the prank they pull is it's a prank that they were taught by some Irish kids who there's kind of like gangs in Hell's Kitchen and whatnot, and it's all kind of separated by Italians and Irish and blah blah blah. So the narrator goes up to a hot dog vendor and says, I want to buy a hot dog, and he gets his hot dog and then he runs away. The vendor chases him, leaving the hot dog cart unmanned, and his friends go up and eat all the hot dogs they want, and then they kind of get away. In this case, they steal the hot dog cart and they're holding it over the stairs of a subway station, and when the hot dog vendor comes, they can't hold it any longer because it's too heavy because of all the stuff underneath it that's making the water hot and whatnot. And it falls, and as it falls, it hits a man. The man doesn't die, so the kids are sent for 1 year in this juvenile detention center called Wilkinson's Home for Boys. Now, where it's alluded that Father Bobby has spent time in this place and knows exactly what goes on there and is kind of trying to help these kids. So they go there and it is brutal. What happens to them is absolutely brutal, down to it's basically the guards led by Noakes and a few others. Noakes, who will ultimately meet his demise in the book. But Noakes leads these guards in this systematic cycle of mental and physical and sexual abuse of these four friends. So they get out, of course, and they never speak of it, and they go their separate ways. Michael becomes a lawyer. Tommy and John, who were the best of them in as much as they were the most innocent of these kids, end up becoming criminals. And the author becomes a reporter. And what happens is John and Tommy see Noakes in a diner one night, and they kill him in cold blood in front of people, and they're arrested for the murder. And Michael, as a lawyer, he's working for the district attorney, takes the case and sets it up with the author, with Lorenzo, with the narrator, I should say, not the author, the narrator. Sets it up that he will prosecute his friends, John and Tommy. Carol is still around, but although she's still in love with Michael, she hasn't had any contact with him. And the narrator goes to Father Bobby and asks him to lie on the stand and say that John and Tommy were with him as part of their kind of defense, which he ums and ahs about until the narrator tells him exactly what happened in the Wilkinson Home for Boys. Carol finds out what happened, and the murderers, John and Tommy, are acquitted. All the guards that were implicated in what happened get their comeuppance, and we find out what happens to everyone at the end of the book. And that is Sleepers. This book was fucking amazing. This is a book that should be taught in fucking high schools. It should be taught in universities. Yeah, the subject matter is controversial. I get it. People don't want to deal with the harsh realities of the juvenile detention system. Fine. You want to stick your head in the fucking sand? Shit like this happens. Okay? It just does. You can't get around that. But the way this was written, the way we are almost forced to care for each of these characters, for Lorenzo, for Michael, for Tommy, for John, even Carol. Because by the end of this book, I mean, sure, Carol does have a happy ending at the end of this book, but she suffers too. Because she is intrinsically linked to all of these kids when they're sent away. She has to kind of deal with her grief as well. It's phenomenal. You know what? Fuck it. Top 5. Putting it right there. Putting it in the top 5 books of all time, in my opinion. Sleepers by Lorenzo Carcaterra. You are not going to find a better revenge story. You're not going to find a better kind of childhood growing up story. Like, this is the book that you want. This has everything. And honestly, if you're not choked up by the end of this, where you're reading what happens to these kids as they grow older, you find out their final kind of fates and whatnot, you're not a fucking human. That's all there is to it. Now, I will, at some point, be reviewing Gangster. I have my summer vacation coming up, which is when I'm going to hit all my hardcovers. This is going to be one of them. I don't like taking hardcovers to work with me because I'm on the subway and they're heavy and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah. Sleepers, Lorenzo Carcaterra. Highly recommend this. Fantastic book. Fantastic story. And, fuck, if you don't want to read the book, go watch the movie. I mean, for fuck's sake. Brad Pitt, De Niro, Kevin Bacon. Come on. You can't find a better fucking cast than that. So, there you have it. Stay safe, have a fantastic rest of your day, but most importantly, drink a Korean beer. Read a fucking book, people.